In the brutal landscape of the Crusades, hatred was a currency as common as coin. It was an age of holy war, where Christian knights and Muslim warriors clashed in a bloody struggle for control of the Holy Land, a conflict fueled by religious fervor and centuries of animosity. Yet, within this maelstrom of violence, a paradox emerged. The Crusaders, men who had sworn an oath to defeat the forces of Islam, began to speak of their greatest enemy not with contempt, but with a strange, almost reluctant admiration. They spoke of his honor, his mercy, and his chivalry. They spoke of Saladin. In an era defined by division, how did one man earn the respect of his most bitter rivals? This is the code of the Sultan who became the enemy everyone secretly admired. Born in 1137, Salah al-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub, known to the West as Saladin, was a Kurdish soldier who rose through the ranks in a fractured Muslim world. The Middle East was a chessboard of rival emirates and caliphates, more interested in fighting each other than uniting against the Crusader kingdoms that had carved out territories along the coast. Saladin's early career was a masterclass in political and military maneuvering. He was patient, cunning, and ruthless when necessary. He consolidated his power in Egypt, then methodically expanded his influence into Syria, uniting the disparate Muslim factions under a single banner for the first time in generations, the Ayyubid Sultanate. His singular, unifying goal was a sacred one, the liberation of Jerusalem. To the Crusaders, he was becoming more than just another warlord. He was the sword of Islam, forged and sharpened, and he was pointing it directly at them. But even as he built his military power, he also built a reputation as a just and pious ruler. Unlike many leaders of his time, Saladin was not interested in personal luxury. He lived an austere life, preferring the company of scholars to the splendors of the court. He poured his resources into building infrastructure, hospitals, schools, and colleges known as madrasas, fostering a revival of Sunni Islamic scholarship. His court was a place of justice, where he would personally hear the petitions of his people, regardless of their status. This foundation of piety and justice was the bedrock of his character, an internal code that would later inform his every action on the world stage. In the aftermath of the battle, the captured Crusader leaders were brought before Saladin. Here his code was put on display. He offered a cup of chilled water to the thirsty King Guy as a sign of hospitality and mercy. But when the treacherous Lord Reynald of Chatillon, a man infamous for breaking treaties and attacking innocent pilgrims, also drank from the cup, Saladin made it clear the mercy was not for him. Citing Reynald's repeated dishonor, Saladin executed him on the spot. He was ruthless with those who broke their word, but honorable to those who fought as kings. This sent a clear message. Saladin was not a barbarian, he was a man of honor. This was the moment that would define Saladin's legend, not just for his people, but for his enemies. When the Crusaders had first conquered Jerusalem in 1099, they had unleashed a horrific massacre, slaughtering men, women, and children in the streets. Now, as Saladin stood at the gates, the Christians inside expected a similarly bloody revenge. But Saladin's code was different. After a brief siege, he accepted the city's surrender. There was no massacre. Instead, he offered terms that shocked the Christian world. The city's inhabitants could ransom themselves for a modest fee. Those who could not pay were, by the laws of war, his slaves. But even then, Saladin and his brother, moved by the sight of weeping families, paid the ransom for thousands out of their own pockets, allowing them to leave the city freely and safely. This act of mercy, in stark contrast to the brutality of the era, was the first message that echoed across Europe. Their enemy was not a barbarian, he was a man of honor. The fall of Jerusalem sent shockwaves through Christendom, prompting the Third Crusade, a grand campaign led by the three most powerful kings in Europe. but its ultimate champion would be England's King Richard I, known as the Lionheart, a military genius and a fearsome warrior. The stage was set for a clash of titans. For the next 2 years, these two legendary figures, Saladin and Richard, would engage in a brutal yet strangely intimate war. They were the ultimate rivals, the embodiments of their respective faiths, yet a profound sense of mutual respect developed between them. Their rivalry was punctuated by incredible acts of chivalry that have become the stuff of legend. During the Battle of Jaffa, when Richard the Lionheart lost his horse and was forced to fight on foot, Saladin, seeing his enemy's disadvantage, sent 2 fresh Arabian stallions into the enemy lines as a gift, stating that it was not fitting for a king to fight like a common soldier. On another occasion, when Richard fell gravely ill with a fever, Saladin sent his personal physician to treat him, along with gifts of fresh fruit and snow from the mountains to cool him. This was not the behavior of a savage infidel. This was the conduct of a king who saw his rival not just as an enemy, but as an equal. Though they never met face to face, the two leaders engaged in a constant duel of words through their envoys. They exchanged messages of threats, proposals, and even witty banter. Richard would boast of his martial prowess, and Saladin would counter with displays of his immense resources and unwavering resolve. This ongoing negotiation, a high-stakes chess match of diplomacy, revealed a shared understanding between the two men. They were both kings, warriors, and pragmatists who recognized the caliber of their opponent. This dialogue, as much as their battles, forged the legendary respect they held for one another. The war ended not in a final cataclysmic battle, but in a truce. The Treaty of Jaffa, signed in 1192, left Jerusalem under Muslim control, but guaranteed safe passage for unarmed Christian pilgrims to visit the holy sites. It was a pragmatic and respectful conclusion to a bloody conflict. Saladin had achieved his primary goal, while Richard could return to Europe having secured the rights of his people. The war was over, but the legend was just beginning. Saladin's legacy was twofold. In the Muslim world, he was, and still is, a hero of unparalleled stature, the unifier of the faith and the liberator of Jerusalem. But his legacy in the West is perhaps even more fascinating. He became the face of the noble Saracen. European chroniclers of the Crusade, while enemies, could not help but write of his wisdom, his generosity, and his honor. The great poet Dante, in his Inferno, placed Saladin in the first circle of hell, not among the tormented, but in limbo, a place reserved for virtuous pagans who lived righteous lives but were not Christian. He was a foe so noble they couldn't bring themselves to truly damn him. The code of Saladin was simple yet profound, that even in the most brutal of conflicts, one's honor and mercy are not weaknesses, but sources of immense power. It was a code that transcended religion and warfare, earning him a place in history as the enemy his rivals were proud to have fought. And that is the architecture of the honor of Saladin. Remember, history is more than a story. It's a code, and there is always another layer to decrypt. Subscribe and continue the investigation with us.